I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now. I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage and I'm ready to break out. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop. This time, like the last time, you better get ready to race to the top. I'm ready to do this, show you what the truth is. I step on the field, it's time to get real. I'm feeling so ruthless. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Yeah. So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made of. Get in the game, your moment of fame. Show them what you made of. It's time that we stand up. It's time that we man up. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up. My time. Nothing can keep me from reaching the top. This time, like the last time, I'm moving so fast, I'm ready to ride. I'm ready to throw down. It's time for the showdown. I'm ready to rise. Don't be surprised, I'll take on the world now. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. My town, my crown. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. My town, my crown. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Turning the track up. I'll never go back down. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
A thrilling couple of endurance rounds to open up the middle of the season leads us back to Watkins Glen, located just a few hours' drive from the Big Apple, New York City itself, and it hosts the 5th round of Season 11 for the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series, all coverage on Apex Racing TV. Welcome to our audience. Streaming live on the iRacing Esports Network around this 5.4 kilometer circuit, around about 3.5 miles here of Watkins Glen. 11 corners to challenge the drivers as we use the classic boot layout that was once used back in the Formula One days many decades ago. It's a historic circuit that will challenge the drivers today for 45 minutes of racing action. We're back to one pit stop in comparison to our endurance format, where two were required. Copious amounts of elevation change, and it requires a unique driving style to master one of the best circuits in the world. It's quite a short run down to turn one, but it's going to be a rolling start nevertheless. Alongside me is Daniel Leet. I'm Jonathan Simon in the commentary booth. Scott Newton behind the scenes in production. Daniel, we're about to begin our pace lap, but good to be back here at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, g'day Jonathan and all the viewers tuning in. Great to have you on board for your Sunday evening. Happy Easter to everyone, wherever you are in the world. Yeah, mate, we saw a fantastic race last week, 90 minutes at Spa, a very close finish with Fusion Sim Racing getting a 1-2 in the form of Craig Edwards, Nathan Happerts, Lee Vandenberg coming up in third, so really good result for those guys there. But switching now from that 90 minutes back to the 45, down to one pit stop, pretty much anything can happen here tonight. We saw some big changes last week with setups and BOP being revised. No changes going on this week, but everyone now with that little bit of time should be up to put on a fantastic run.
So let's look at the grid for today's 45-minute event. This is the top split of two for this event, and it will be Luke Pink starting from pole, a driver we haven't seen race in this series. This will be his inaugural event in the top split. He is one of Australia's best karters, Daniel, and so far in the sim, proving his worth as well.
Yeah, really solid effort up there tonight, actually getting in front of some very seasoned competitors in these cars, the likes of Craig Edwards, Anthony Wilkerman, certainly no slouch either. And yeah, Luke's done a fantastic job to put that car on pole tonight.
So he'll be joined by Craig Edwards alongside him. Then we have Anthony Winkleman and Julian Kleinbusink with an impressive qualifying performance to climb up onto our front couple of rows. Lee Vandenberg and Timothy Phoeben have been impressive in the series. They'll start behind them. How about Adam Gardner starting from 7th? The top 10 will be rounded out by Josh Thomas, our champion from last season. Neil Pearson on the 6th row of the grid will be joined by Kiwi Chris Robinson. Then we cycle through the rest of the order on this pace lap. So Daniel, 45 minutes of racing action. We've got one pit stop coming up. The talk of the town the past few weeks has been the balance of power in this series. Frozen setups for these guys. It's going to be a fixed setup event, but these cars have been quite a beast to manage on version 7 tires.
Yeah, it's been really interesting seeing how the guys have adapted to the change in tyre models. And I mean, we got our first taste of it at Road America, and unfortunately we did have a few issues along the way, which then resulted in some of these change of performance issues to tighten up the field and bring everyone back a little bit closer. I think now that everyone's had at least one solid week on running these setups, getting used to the way they drive, we're going to be a lot better off. Now, the big thing will be later on, as you touched on, one pit stop for these guys to make tonight. When do they want to play their card and come in? Now, I'm sure a lot of guys are going to try and run this as long as possible, come in late, take advantage of those tyres and gain whatever little bit of stop they can do later on to finish off the race. We may see some really good, though, strategies from guys further down the field, the likes of your Warren Pickerings, Chris Whitakers, Nick Sanfilippo, well down the order, may try and go that undercut route as well.
And 50 drivers as Mitchell Bales rounds out 25 rows here in this double file rolling start. Can I make an accurate prediction, Daniel, in that we may have a 100% chance of a safety car in this 45-minute event? There's 50 cars to maneuver around if you start at the back for Bale.
Yeah, look, I think unfortunately it's a pretty fair chance that we could potentially see one, especially as you go for that big long run up through the first couple of sweepers up onto the back straight. We don't go through the bus stop that has become synonymous with this circuit. Sorry, especially for the IMSA series, which I think is a little bit of a shame. We would have loved to see these cars have a run down through there, but with everyone pushing to get down into that hairpin as quick as possible, there's every chance that we could see this later on.
The racing was awesome around here in open wheelers back in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series days. Quite a unique circuit. And here we go now, ready to kick off action here. Luke Pink floors it for Mach 1 Esports, and he already leads the field away for 45 minutes of racing.
Fantastic jump there for Lucas Winkleman, get very sideways on the exit of that final corner, who's going to come under a lot of attack here with Lee Vandenberg pushing down. Everyone else throughout the field filing through pretty nicely, too wide as they all run through turn one.
Now 4 makes of cars here, all trying to fight for position. Pink dominating so far. He's already got about a half a second advantage as they climb towards the back straight for the first time.
Yeah, he's doing everything he needs to do to try and extend a little bit of a gap, maybe lose that draft of Edwards right behind. You see Clemberson getting involved in it. Winkelman very defensive on the run into that hairpin further back. A couple of the Tricks and Sport cars slowly working their way back up from a little bit of a lower qualifying position in Rizzo and Thomas as well. And Josh Burton, who we're watching on at the moment. Haven't seen much in for a couple of races, but coming through nicely down in that 16th position.
And what a sight that was on the back straight. Credit to Ryan Kolstad and the crew. It's just been awesome to see this series develop over the past couple of seasons. We're still racing here on the opening lap as we follow Joshua Burden in the BMW. Coming towards the heel, as it's known at Watkins Glen. And drivers, I think, Daniel, at this stage, some of these guys have not been single file for the entirety of the race so far.
No, we're seeing a lot of too wide action, especially over this first 2/3 of the lap already. And full credit to all these guys. We haven't had any contact as yet. Everyone going very, very nicely and just affording a little bit of room. Everyone now, though, dropping back into that single file as we work our way through to the end of the first lap.
So Pink leads. Edwards remains close in the Ferrari, and he's had a decent recovery after that poor getaway from the final corner. And through turn one they go. You're allowed to run wide there. You just have to rejoin the circuit before the grass begins. And let me tell you something here, Daniel. I think Craig Edwards is in with an opportunity here for P number 1.
Yeah, really starting to stretch the legs of that Ferrari. The draft here is going to be all important for him. You can see him up top of the rev range, just clicks it into 6th. And we're going to see Pink go very defensive already, but this could work well for Edwards as he brings that FSR Ferrari around through that corner.
So Edwards still close though, maintains the draft. They've broken away from Winkelman and Julian Kleinbersink behind. In your top 10, the only position changes were between Timothy Fieben and Lee Vandenberg. They started vice versa of what I called. And there's a drive-through penalty already for that might be Chris Whitaker. And I also have heard that Ross Rizzo has had a moment now and is falling down the order. The man who deserves so much better over the past couple of endurance rounds. His luck just isn't getting any better. Let's have a look at the replay for Rizzo.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird spin, just the back of that Ferrari coming around on him, and unfortunately he did get through there without any contact but is right on the onboard. We'll get a bit more of a look at it, and it's a very weird way that the rear just very, very loose at this point, still coming up to pressure on those tyres, and unfortunately that Ferrari goes all the way around.
So very unfortunate for him. It's been an abysmal few rounds, I should say, for Ross Rizzo, and I just feel bad for the dude. But coming across the line, Pink now under attack from Edwards. Like we said, look at the lap times on the top left-hand side of screen. A 41.9 for Edwards means he's the fastest man on the racetrack.
Yeah, putting in some very good times, just marginally slower behind Anthony Winkelman, who's now dispersed of Julian Klimbersink. Klimbersink now, though, under a huge amount of attack. Tim Fieben pushing through in the Mark 1 Esports car, and he's going to bring his teammate along, Lee Vandenberg, in the Ferrari. Actually, 3 Mark 1 cars all in a row there with one of the FSR cars in Nathan Happett's, our race winner last time out, second place last time out, coming through as well.
It's good stuff from these guys as the race progresses. Too early to make a pit stop, Daniel.
Yeah, look, I think you may want to play the card if you're further down the order, because remember we did remove the compulsory stop where all these guys needed to come through at the end of lap 3, so they are able to come through at the conclusion of the first lap and take those stops. We've already seen some very good strategies play out for those guys that have taken it on. Tim Phoeben now, as he goes through the heel there, has now made that pass up into the 4th position, gets past Julian Kliversing. Darren Lobb a little further down the order, currently in 16th, just getting past Martin Crisp, and now looking to put a move on. Who's that? A little further up. Actually, no, closing in on Martin Crisp, so not too far off. Paul Wood having a very good run just behind these guys as well, working his way through the field now.
Yeah, multitude of cars, and it's very odd to see some of these drivers down the order as we watch Paul Wood all over the rear end of the Ford of Aaron Specchio. Now, if you're watching this series for the first time, fixed setups, 4 different makes of cars, and there's a brilliant shot of the 4 cars right now. You've got a Ferrari ahead of the Ford. We're riding on board with a BMW. And there's a Porsche all over the rear end here of Paul Wood and the Aussie Racers BMW.
Yeah, and great to see just how close these manufacturers are now with those balance of performance changes. We're going to see a really good run, though, from Dave Mill. You can just see him in that rear view. Not quite close enough to get a move done, but right behind him as well, Martin Salvassi coming in for a run as well. Now, Martin hasn't run in this series much at all, so 4 Trick Esports drivers out there tonight, and they're putting on a fantastic run at the moment.
And there's a drive-through penalty for Braden Nash for causing a collision on lap 3. We're going to see a few of those, like I said, in this 50-car field. And you know what, Daniel? Ryan Kolstad needs to be given a beer after this event, because if you can adjudicate an event like this, you deserve some sort of gift. So I hope our sponsors at RMS 55, even Simfinity and Abruzzi Raceway sort of can shout him a beer, hopefully, after the event. Even us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, race stewards here do a fantastic job week in, week out. We do see generally 2 splits, both of which have live stewarding, so a very solid effort from all those guys behind the scenes, keeping this one going. It looked like Jesse Butler just having a little bit of a off-track excursion there. Well, actually, getting into one of the teammates, that was Nash, and that explains his penalty that we just saw there. So actually rotating one of those 2 Mark 1 cars around.
So who was into Pat Gallo, and that's a hefty whack with the wall. And are they allowed fast repairs, Daniel? And for anyone who's new to iRacing, care to explain?
Yeah, definitely. So for the drivers tonight, we will get the 1 mandatory pit stop, so the guys do need to come down for tyres. They will be able to, I believe, take a quick repair. The one thing they need to keep an eye on, and did change from last season to this one, in the event that we do see a driver escape, not only do we get a safety car, which will have one of the safety officials driving the Porsche around tonight, we will see a no escape rule in play too. So for those guys to do escape, unfortunately, they cannot return to the races. If you were real life racing, you get your DNF.
Exactly. So stewards here trying to maintain brilliant driving standards, and it'll be tough to do so. And I'll tell you what, Julian Kliversing has dropped down the order quite rapidly here since the beginning of the race. He's slicing and dicing with Nathan Hupperts for the 6th position. And that scrap's going on. Craig Edwards to the lead, though, for the first time today. So it was an overtake into the carousel, and apologies at home. We are having some technical issues behind the scenes, but we were able to catch that, and that was a brilliant overtake by Craig Edwards. Where you expect it, Daniel, into the best overtaking spot here at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, probably the best spot on the track to get that move done, and he did it quite nicely. So now we'll start to see the legs of that Ferrari really get into play. Anthony Winkelman likewise looking to get a move up into 2nd position as well, which I think he's going to be able to get that move done quite nicely as well. So we'll watch for this move, actually gets the nose chopped on him there a little bit. So pushing very well, both these two drivers.
So Luke Pink's got his work cut out for him. Brilliant to see from the young man who's only 14 years of age. And I remember back to Bono Haas, who was winning races in the World Championship in Formula Sim racing back when he was 14. Won his first World Championship at 16 years of age. So for Bono, he's currently, I think, 24 or 25 now. I've got to check his actual birth date. I don't want to stalk the dude, but one of the greatest sim racers of all time, did it at a young age. And Luke Pink could be doing the same in the real world and the virtual world.
Yeah, definitely. And for the karters out there, this is a fantastic show just to see how well they can adapt from going through normally back into the virtual world and maintaining that discipline while we're going through these times at the moment. But he's doing a really solid job here, holding off some really talented drivers behind him and gaining, well, actually not really losing, but slowly closing back in on Craig Edwards as they run down through turn number 1.
Nice stuff here. And apologies for a second, I lost pictures as well. There's so many cars out there. It's a good sign for the series. We've got pictures back here behind the scenes, but Pink is about a few tenths behind Edwards for that lead advantage. Now, if you look at his number as well, as he edges closer and closer for the lead, he's got an orange overlay on the left-hand side. So his name is in orange, and what that means is he is listed, Daniel, with a 300 number, and those numbers are based on your I rating. Your purple drivers are your most experienced out there in the field.
Yeah, and to be going up against the two top ones in the likes of Edwards, Winkelmann, Phoeben, certainly holding his own, and definitely may even see him getting bumped up through the order a little bit quicker with the showing that he's having tonight.
So Josh Thomas back in 10th is in a nice scrap as well. And he's up the inside into the heel. Trying to be forceful here as he makes his way past Adam Gardner, perhaps, in the Porsche. And the off-camber traction zone here is ever so difficult. I've had some good races in my time, Daniel, around this circuit, and I always try to set up my car well for that left-hander because I know that the drivers behind me, they're going to push harder to try and make up that time, and eventually they all spin trying to catch up to me. So that's my dirty trick around Watkins Glen.
Yeah, I've not been able to find any good runs myself to help with that. I've always seemed to have that car a little bit off kilter there, which doesn't work in my favour. But for the guys that are getting the setups working well, and like yourself finding that really trick little line that can help you out, absolutely make the most of it while you can. And I think we're going to see that as this continues on though. Josh Thomas closing up on Gardner as they come to the top of the crest there. Get himself a nice toe down that back straight. Gardner very defensive though. Holds that middle inside line. Trent Thomas slowly closing up, but I don't think he'll be in with an opportunity to have a crack as they file down into the hairpin.
Oh, contact at the carousel, by the way, just so you know. The lead's changing, but Josh Thomas is into the barrier. So we see Luke Pink leading, Winkelmann behind, Edwards third, but Gardner's also had some issues in the Porsche, so he's fallen down the order, and I think it was a collision as we watch the replay between the two. So what's gone on for Craig Edwards there? That was absolutely bizarre. He's just lost it all on his own. One of the craziest things I've seen in quite some time in the series. I don't think he was forced off as well, Daniel, if you watch the replay. This is heading into the chute at turn 6, right after the outer loop, also known as the carousel. And yeah, I think he's just misjudged it all on his own, watching behind the scenes here.
Yeah, a little bit of a tricky one. As you say, I don't think there's any contact involved in that, and very unfortunate. We are starting to see pit stops underway with Craig Edwards jucking in the lane as well. So that's the first of our stoppers now.
So Edwards might as well service that car, like you said. Make that one and only pit stop required for today. We're expecting everybody in the field to come in for that pit stop. And for Edwards, like we said, should be able to get that fast repair out and away, which is a bonus for him, because I tell you what, that would be damaged steering and a car that wouldn't be able to make it to the finish usually in the real world.
No, not at all. And steering around this place, ever critical to get the most out of these cars. And while he can get that out, he should come back into a nice bit of clear air as well, which will only help him later on get that run through. Now, just keeping an eye on Lee Vandenberg at the moment, currently sitting in the 5th position. He's got a nice train of cars behind him with actually Nathan Happett's right in front, Julian Klibersink right behind, and these guys scrapping on the way down to the heel of the boot here at the moment. And all 3 cars very closely bunched together right behind them. Simon Nicholson also starting to get involved in that Ferrari.
There's always going to be a scrap throughout the field, but the real story's back out at the front as Luke Pink has yet again succumbed to more pressure and the draft here at Watkins Glen, which pays dividends. It's Anthony Winkleman who'll lead his first lap of the day after Neil Pearson, after Craig Edwards absolutely butchered his lead advantage. And for Pink, nevertheless, you know what, Daniel? A win or a podium, he deserves it. He's having a good first race so far in the series.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a really strong showing for him early on. Obviously, we saw him take the pole, a very good lap time. He put on a very solid defence against Craig Edwards early on. And he hasn't lost touch of Winkleman here, so expect him to hold tight. And if he can stay with the draft, he's definitely in with a chance to extend over the podium. But these two right now extending a very nice gap over Tim Phoebe and Nathan Happett's a further 4.5 to 5 seconds behind this battle now.
Yep, nice stuff. As these guys are all in their nice little scraps here. How about Julian Klibersink, by the way, Daniel? An awesome race so far for him, and he just seems to be improving week to week.
Yeah, definitely coming along. The Supervac esports team have really stepped up their game over the last few races, and to find themselves up just begging on the door of a top 5 here at this early stage is really promising to see for them. Look for them to continue working their way further forward.
So Damon Mulqueen now at the back of this train. Actually, no, that's Will Newell even behind him. This is a nice little train behind that includes Chris Barnes in 21st, Jesse Butler in 18th, Pickering up ahead, leading the pack away in the BMW. And again, Daniel, I know you're a huge fan of the Porsche, but not looking good in this race so far for the Porsches. The leading Porsche, that's the 3rd time I've said that in 15 seconds, is in the 15th position, ironically.
Well, yeah, that's in the hands there of Martin Silvassi, doing a solid job actually in that car, and only a couple of spots further up. But yeah, I'd love to certainly see the Porsche a little bit further up, and I know we sort of said that early on in the piece with the Fords. We wanted to see them back up after their strong running at the end of last season, or 2 seasons ago now. They were very, very formidable. So to see them working their way back up, and the Porsche's obviously getting a little bit of love, which is good to see. And they're only just a little outside that top 10 at the moment, but definitely in the hands of some very capable drivers. They'll be definitely working their way forward.
How about Lee Vandenberg here? Klibersink's going to lose another spot now. He's dropping like flies after starting this race on our front 2 rows. And he's alongside the Ferrari of Simon Nicholson. And he's going to defend the position for the moment. Here they head to the toe. Want to throw the car into here as the gravity gets it slowed down. Klibersink on the marbles will have to form up, but he's on the attack yet again, heading into the heel.
Yeah, looking very defensive. He's pushed Nicholson right over to the outside edge. Nicholson holds that inside line. Will maintain. Klibersink just looking now at options. So if you can hold steady through here, might be able to set a run up back into turn 1. But that BMW at the moment really starting to hurt the tyre. So maybe even a potential to come in the lane, get an early stop knocked out of the way.
So let's see if he dives in. No, continues for another lap. It's a different mindset in these races, Daniel. The past 2 weeks in this series, like we discussed, have been endurance events. So that's our 90-minute format. We return back to our 45-minute format, which I tell you what, I'm a big fan of. Love these 45-minute sprint races. And as these two climb up through the S's yet another time. We see pit stops down the rear end of the order, so you can keep track of all of that at the bottom of the screen. You can keep track of our sponsors at the top right-hand side of the screen. That's the race management service. You can visit them at rms55.com.au. Let's not forget, of course, Simfinity and Abruzzi Racewear, where you can get a hold of brilliant sim racing equipment. We're approaching the 20-minute mark of this event, almost halfway through. And yet again, as we discussed, the lead picture is being painted to be a battle between Winkleman and Pink as they head through to the heel.
Yeah, and they're not much of a gap between them, only out to 0.4 of a second. And for the people familiar with Winkleman, very, very seasoned competitor, not only in GTs, but races in quite a few different seasons. We've seen him through Sim Asia quite a few years ago, being very competitive in the GLA series, and now coming over to run the Aussie mixed and fixed, and putting on a fantastic running for his first time out in this championship, and really picking up where Trick Esports were only a couple of weeks ago in the hands of Ross Rizzo at Road America. So doing a very nice job, but take nothing away though from Luke Pink. Holding tough there, only half a second behind. The lap time's very, very consistent right now, and actually was 0.2 quicker last time by. So he's looking after those tyres in the BMW quite nicely.
So how are the tyres faring? Because generally in V7, we know you want to run minimum pressures. That's always the quickest way to go about things in any car. Do the tyres drop off and then plateau, or is there a stagnant drop off?
Look, there will be a bit of a drop now with in the BOP changes that came about for all these cars. I actually saw an uprate in the tyre pressures as well to give a bit more stabilisation out early, but it will come at the cost of a little bit of stability later on in the run. And right now we're starting to get into 20 minutes in. We're nearly halfway into this race where the tyres are going to start getting probably a little past that sweet spot right now, and we're starting to see it with the different driving styles of our two out in front. So not losing anything, and I think to that change in tyre pressure is probably something that would have helped or aided potentially in that Ross Rizzo spin that we saw earlier on with the Ferrari losing the back end as well, not being as settled as they might have liked in that car. But for the two out front, looking after the tyres quite nicely, and I think for all the other cars that we're seeing out there at the moment, the tyres are not too bad. Lap times may be a little slower than our front runners, but they're not fading too far at all.
Let's look at Neil Pearson here down the back end of the order. Our champion from last season. Hasn't been the best season for him, Daniel. It's been very surprising to go from champion to consistently around your bottom end of the top 10. Is that quite a dip off in about, what's that, 2 months since the last season, a month?
Yeah, it's been a pretty tough run for Neil and the DPR team this time out. I mean, they were a class act last season and hence taking the championship, but they've struggled a little bit. And I don't know whether that's a slight adaptation to the new setups and some of the changes within the series that have maybe impacted them a little bit more, but great to see him inside that top 10 at the moment. Just in front of Neil, we see a solid battle still. Trent Thomas and Simon Nicholson going on as they scrap down into the outer loop. At the same time we talk about that, Nielsen looking to try and get a move done on Klebersink as well.
Klebersink just can't get a breath of fresh air. And have a look at Trent Thomas. Oh, goodness. Is there contact? Well, there was a touch with the XRC Racing Ferrari, and another touch on the exit, I think, between these guys, as Neil Pearson's got nowhere to go. And they head through the toe one more time here as we approach or have passed the halfway distance of this race. Darren Lobbs behind, ready to pounce. And he's climbed up through the order after starting from 21st. And if these drivers collide, he'll be right there to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, and while they're battling too, we've still got a couple of guys moving in to extend this fight out as well. Chris Robinson in the Ford, just at the back of shot there, as well as Martin Chris starting to close up in the Ferrari also. So we're going to have a nice 5-car train here very, very soon as all these guys continue. Looks like Lob going to duck into the lane. And who's the other car?
Neil Pearson.
I think it was Nielsen. Neil Pearson also.
Nielsen Pearson. That might be his new name. This will be his nickname. So Nielsen's going to come into the pit lane And the good news for Nielsen is that, Daniel, he doesn't have to, his view is not impeded heading into his box. You know when you're sometimes stuck behind a driver and you just can't see your lollipop? So these guys are going to make a quick pit stop here. Is that a quick stop for these guys?
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. The guys will just be in, put a slight splash of fuel in, and they'll continue on as they were. Looks like a change of position though, with Lobb and Pearson. So the stop for Neil Pearson actually a little bit quicker, 2.5 seconds, but he's lost out overall comparison to his teammate.
Wow, that's very odd for Pearson, who just set the purple sector of the race last lap on his in lap. So not sure what went wrong for him, because he certainly exited his box after Darren Lobb made his way past. So we'll wait and see what happened to Pearson. Have a talk to him potentially at the end of the race. Now, if we look back at our leaders, they're coming towards the end of the lap, and it's Winkelman from Luke Pink, the Trick Esports driver of Winkelman. His teammate Ross Rizzo out of the event already. Just hasn't had any luck. Has Ross, not this event, not the past couple of rounds, but who's going to dive into the lane? Will it be any of these two? And they don't. And is that because of traffic? There is no clear air behind to slot themselves into.
Yeah, and I think with the consistency still in these cars, they're the only drive, or only a few out of the top 5 that are still maintaining a pretty good run outside the 142s. So I think while they've got the consistency and they can run with it, they might as well stick with it. We see Robinson ducking in the lane. Nicholson still fighting ever harder to keep Trent Thomas, another one of the Trick Esports cars, right behind. But Thomas gets a solid run up through the S's and makes that move nice and easy.
Still alongside each other are these two. Daniel, I'm going to step away from my monitor right here.
Thompson down the inside is holding tough, but likewise, same Nicholson, not letting go in that throw. He's going to set himself nicely for the run up down through the chute there.
Again, he almost lost it.
Nearly loses that back end, very reminiscent of that half spin that we saw for Ross Rizzo, unfortunately, early on in the race, but able to regather it, and a nice job, but that has released now the pressure from Trent Thomas.
We've seen some hilarious pile-ups, especially at Road America. We saw 2 track blockages in this series back at Bathurst. The racing standards today have been absolutely phenomenal, and who says iRacers can't race today proves it wrong. Well, maybe not for me, because every race I jump into, you just seem to get taken out. How about our leaders in the lane at the same time?
Yeah, good effort for both those guys to come in. It looks like 3rd and 4th also in for Phoeben, Happert's, Vandenberg dumping in, Klimbasing coming in. So all our drivers in the top 10 now coming in to get their stops completed. I think we saw Josh Burden also likewise coming in. Slovakian. Now's the time for everyone to be hitting this lane.
Thank goodness it's virtual, because I tell you what, one of these pit crew members would have a broken leg at the end of this. 16 cars in the lane this lap. Come on, Edwards, jump in. Will it be 17? Oh, no, he's already jumped in the lane, so we'll have maximum 16. Who's going to lead this race? Winkelman off the lane first. Timothy Phoeben will look 3rd. Luke Pink is sandwiched between them in 2nd. How about Craig Edwards, actually, who made the undercut work? He slots up into the 3rd position. What a pit party that was. Vandenberg comes out 5th. Huppert's behind in 6th, and it's Klimbasing from Trent Thomas. Darren Lobb 9th. Neil Pearson 10th. Goodness me, what a pit phase.
Yeah, that was a huge amount of drivers come in, and the real fortunate one out of all those stops was Winkelman, who was able to extend a very nice healthy gap now over Luke Pink out to just over 2.8 seconds. So really solid effort on the line there. Pink's still doing a great job, and he's got himself a nice gap likewise over Edwards. Phoeben Vandenberg, dropping down a little bit further, and I feel for Nathan Happerts. He was in a really good spot there, battling for 3rd position, and drops now down into 6th spot.
Now that's interesting, Daniel. Is that fuel a reason why they all pitted at the same time, or is that everybody reacting to the driver in front?
I think we would have seen a lot of everyone reacting at that point, because the minute our race leader come in and looking at the pace that we're seeing from both our front 2, they're going to want to cover each other off. And I think for Luke Pink, really smart move, drop in, get his stop done. Did lose a little bit of time overall, but he set himself up now for a really good run to finish this race out with just over 15 minutes on the clock still to go.
How about this from Lee Vandenberg versus Nathan Huppertz? Fezza versus the BMW. Goodness me, that final corner, Daniel. If you haven't been in the wall there, you're not quick. Let me tell you that much. You've got to push through there.
Yeah, definitely, and it's a corner that it looks very easy coming through. You see the guys running very wide down into one, but has massive repercussions if you just get it a little bit wrong. And I mean, I've certainly fallen foul of it, either trying to get into a lane or get a car through there at times. It's very, very tricky, but as we get the run up through the S's, we're going to see Nathan Huppertz with a very solid run. He's got a nice draft, and he's going to set himself nicely up down the inside.
I'm going to step away from my monitor one more time. I was about to, but I'm going to trust these two. Lee Vandenberg being passed here by Nathan Huppertz for the 5th position. So that's a top 5 provisionally for Nathan Huppertz, ahead of the Mach 1 Esports driver of Vandenberg. And as far as we know, and credit to Ross Rizzo, it's sad to see him in the chat here, Daniel, but he did talk about the fuel limit being around about that 28-minute mark, or 27-minute mark like we discussed, so we believe that's why everybody's dived into the lane at the same time.
Yeah, and I was actually just going to bring that up, so I spotted the same comment from Ross there as well. So not a bad effort for all these guys we're seeing now as that pass has been completed for Nathan Huppertz. He's able to get a little bit of a gap out, and what we'll keep an eye on the strategies playing through. Thank you to Scott for pulling that up. You can already see for all our main drivers come in on lap 16, the big difference there, Craig Edwards splitting the run so far, 8 laps, 10 laps on this current run. So begs the question, how will he be on for fuel at the end of this stint?
Yeah, that's a good question there. I think he should be okay. A lap around here is about 1:40, just over. And so I think he will make it. Scott Newton, our producer behind the scenes, doing a brilliant job pulling up this graphic at the perfect time where we're able to see the stint length. Everybody opting to run, or at least most drivers opting to run a longer first stint. Not the same for Specchio, who seems to be dropping a couple of positions there. Adam Gardner down the order, not the same for him either. And now we're watching Specchio down the order in the 25th position, as he's got a multitude of cars here. Whilst we focus on the lead, Daniel, there seems to be a scrap going on everywhere out there, from P20 to P40 to P49. Don't know where you got to look here as we see position changes.
Yeah, and there's everyone having a solid scrap. And right now, just checking out Alex Court in the JPS Simshed's car. A little bit of damage on that as he's down in the 27th position. He's got Adam Gardner around him, Billy Fletcher, Adrian Lechty, Mitch Bales, and just in front, we've also got Specchio and Hunter getting involved in this one as well. So really solid fight for these guys. And I just want to make a quick note, we haven't touched on him at all, but Adrian Vlock likewise running a very similar strategy from what we're seeing from Craig Edwards. Unfortunate for Vlock. He's a little bit further down the order at the moment, currently running in that 19th position.
Running that Fordzilla machine. Yeah, is it me, or does the Ford look like the Batmobile? Or am I on... I was about to say something I can't say. Am I on something?
Look, I actually put it more to the Aston Martin Valkyrie. It's got a very similar silhouette to that one. It looks very, very close from a distance with a slight squint. But Flock doing a very nice job in that car. Currently in 19th, he's got Scott Stevens just in front, Damien Mulqueen right behind him. As we cut back to the review shot of Mulqueen as both of them run up through the S's. Mulqueen's going to have a fantastic run as they get to the top of this area down the back straight here.
Very long run down this back straight.
Yeah, and good to see the legs of the Ford still keeping up there. We know in the past the BMW very, very strong in the straight line, but Vlock holding on tight, runs him a little bit wide on the run up through the chute there. Does need to give that position up though, as the BMW pulls through. Track conditions still starting to come down now. 26 degrees on track, so that'll be nice for these drivers right now. The tyres will be really in their sweet spot.
Quite a lot of viewers during this unfortunate period as we deal with the COVID-19 virus who are new to iRacing and might be wondering, how does this all work? That weather on the right-hand side of the screen is dynamic. And so you've got the 24 degrees Celsius air temperature. It's currently 26 degrees Celsius on track. I'm not going to give Fahrenheit for our American viewers, unfortunately. I apologize. But as that timer ticks down, this race will end just before 8 p.m. locally, virtually. And the track's going to cool down. It's going to get darker as well as you lap around here. And since iRacing have introduced that, Daniel, it has changed 24-hour endurance races for the better.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, as much as it was great when we first got the 24-hour events, the big limiting factor at that point was the static environments, and then switching to the changing daylight scenarios we get and the track conditions and the rubbering up. It's only added to the immersion of this sim as we see this solid fight with Klimasink down the inside in that track, the Supervac esports car holding off Trent Thomas. Darren Lobb coming back into play here, and these guys still scrapping over the 7th, but Thomas trying to get that nose in. Not quite there, but yeah, these changes that iRacing have made, very, very nice to see. The big one I'm still waiting for, and I know a lot of participants out there are waiting for, is rain.
Oh, 100%. That would change a lot, wouldn't it? Wouldn't want to run a lot of races in the rain, though, trusting how drivers can't seem to keep the car on the racetrack in the dry. So I certainly recommend it for World Championship events, but for anything else, I'd refrain from doing it, or else you'll suffer an iRating drop for sure. As we watch Klimasink versus Thomas. This is Klimasink in the Supervac esports car. His teammate Dominic Malit nowhere to be seen today. Surely he'll be watching this back going, hey, you know, this is this is a great event for my teammate who qualified on the front 2 rows. Looking good so far in these final 10 minutes. But the draft is the killer around here. Now, Watkins Glen, Daniel, we heard some unfortunate news today that Sterling Moss, who did race around here back in the 50s and 60s, unfortunately passed away, and he was he won a race at Riverside. I can't recall correctly if he ever won a race at Watkins Glen. Something for me to check up as we see Thomas here sail past Klimasink for that 7th position, but very unfortunate to hear of the passing of Sterling Moss, who was definitely by far, hands down, the greatest Formula One driver to never win a championship. Yeah,
very sad news. I actually hadn't heard that at all today, so thank you very much for bringing it to light. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, very big loss there. Probably a driver that everyone would have loved to have seen win a title, and unfortunate to hear of that news today. A little further back in the field, Martin Silvassi still working on the back of Paul Wood. These guys are down scrapping over the 15th and 16th position at the moment. So the Trick Esports guys still working their way through the field. Obviously, we've still got race leader Anthony Winkelman extending his gap ever further now, 3.7 seconds over Luke Pink. But further down the aisle, these battles are still going on solidly. Trent Thomas, though, looks to be starting to close up, still on the back of Vandenberg, who you can see right just in front now. So this is a nice 5-car little train, or 4-car train, sorry, for these guys.
Yeah, but I do apologize if that was the first time anybody heard that news, but certainly was only announced about a couple of hours ago, and it was very sad to hear. But we focus back on the racing. On the lighter side, Daniel, talking about a bit of luck here to win this race. Anthony Winkelman, the Trick Esports driver, looks like he's on his way to winning this. Trent Thomas looking good in the other Trick Esports car. We've got Ross Rizzo in the comment section, who I'd recommend to enter whatever the Powerball is this upcoming week, because I tell you what, based on his bad luck, he might win that one. You recommend it?
Look, hey, always in with a shot. I really feel for Ross. I mean, he came into the series at Road Atlanta, had an absolute blinder as Lee Vandenberg go around, lucky to not be collected as he spins to the inside of the outer loop. That's a really tough spot for him to be in.
I was just about to say there, sorry, that is a difficult spot to get that car turned around. I think he's going to be on that relative box looking for a gap. And so far, I tell you what, he's going to have to rejoin. There's no way through. Vandenberg's just stricken on the inside. He's going to lose at least 30, 40 positions. He has to turn it around somehow. I would just reverse right now and get it. Find yourself onto the NASCAR layout.
Yeah, and then the hard part that they'll have is it also does come up in the racing standards as well, that you've got to be able to rejoin safely. It looks like that car, I think, may have escaped out of the lane, but Vandenberg had fallen well down the order, already down into the 34th spot, and that will be his night run and done there.
Uh-oh, wow. Hands, I tell you what, credit to Lee Vandenberg for not driving like, and I don't mean this in a savage way, but what 90% of other iRacers would do and just rejoin the racing line. That is brilliant stuff from Vandenberg, to be respectful to everybody here on a Sunday night, trying to have some fun virtually in this sim racing universe. So now with 5 minutes to go, time to focus back on the scraps going on up in front. The story is Winkelmann's got this lead in the bag. Luke Pink from pole positions having an impressive first race. What have you thought about Luke Pink so far today, Daniel? We've got a bit of a showcase from one of the best karters in Australia right now, and I can't wait to see how he grows in the world of sim racing.
Yeah, definitely. He's put on a very good show tonight. I mean, no, hasn't put a foot wrong. He's been able to take it to some very talented drivers and very, very seasoned drivers throughout the field early on. The pace has been very, very good in that car also. So he's put on a fantastic showing, recent signing for the Mark 1 guys. So, doing everything that he needs to do right now. And I think you're definitely right. We're going to see a lot more of him in future events.
So that's your top two. Edwards, who is going to be on the bubble in terms of fuel, because he did pit on lap 8, was it, Daniel, wasn't it? So for Edwards, we don't know if he's going to make it to the end of this event. Everybody else pitted on 16. I think he's going to be okay, to be honest with you, in these final couple of laps, but we'll wait and see. So we think Edwards has got about one hand on that podium trophy for P number 3, but Timothy Phoeben behind is ready to pounce if he has to save some fuel.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've really seen both the Mark 1 and the FRS boys for Fish Sim Racing right there or thereabouts over the past few races. Take nothing away from Trick Esports either. I mean, they've fallen on some bad luck over the past few races, but they've been able to come and take it to these guys as well. So the battle for third certainly not done yet. Even though there's a 1.9 second gap, anything can happen in these last couple of minutes.
Nathan Huppard's behind as well. In with the shot. He's about 4 seconds. So if anything goes wrong between Hupperts and Edwards, he's right there in the top 5 positions. Trent Thomas ahead of Climber Sink, 6th and 7th, and it's Darren Lobb from Pearson and from Chris Robinson in the Ford, who brings one of the few Fords out there in the field into the top 10. Now, how can we get more drivers to run the Ford in the future? And is that another car, by the way, on the inside of the outer loop?
I still think that might be Vandenberg still stationary there. So that's
a second time.
Very unfortunate for him. Same spot there. Watch the car go in. Gets a little bit of a wiggle in the back end and goes around, hits the wall, and then as he's tried to rotate that car around, it's got stuck up against the barrier as well. So very unfortunate run for Lee Vandenberg there. Darren Lobb, though, having still a solid run up in 8th position. Currently the lead DPR driver. He's got Neil Pearson right behind him. Those guys are still scrapping down over the 8th and 9th spot. But being the teammates, I don't think there'll be much in there between them. Chris Robinson closing back in as well in the Mark 1 Ford. And Simon Nicholson, who we saw having some solid battles earlier on, just dropping outside the top 10 now.
I don't mean to be pitiful, but that's absolutely hilarious that Vandenberg's lost it at that portion of the racetrack twice. But we're coming towards the final couple of laps here. And for someone, I mean, he won't be laughing about it, but goodness me, he's had a shot here at definitely a top 5 result. It's all gone wrong. I thought it was deja vu. Daniel, I'm not joking. I thought I was in replay mode for a second there. I was so confused.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. I thought actually he may have towed earlier on and that was the end of it. So he managed to get the car turned around and then unfortunately had a similar lose at the back end. So very unfortunate there. But yeah, he also from Rizzo that surprised at that corner, the Ferrari not really working very well there.
Well, anyway, this will be the final lap this time by. We're in the US, so we might as well wave a white flag for these guys. It'll be quite close for Winkelmann. But extending this an extra lap will question whether or not Craig Edwards can make it to the end on fuel. We think he's got enough. And so far, Edwards is catching Luke Pink, but not by enough. He's about 3 seconds behind. So we think your podium's locked in. But the race so far as the sunset looms virtually, a brilliant sight around Watkins Glen. What do we say right now? Winkelmann driven splendidly today at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, really come in, adapted very nicely to that setup and pushing the BMW quite nicely. I have no doubt there would have been a lot of team discussion prior to this one coming up just to get some ideas on how the BMW runs. Obviously, Trent Thomas we've seen in that car throughout the course of the season, getting up to speed on those setups, so it would have been a lot shared, but hasn't put a foot wrong. Had a really solid battle early on with Luke Pink, and ever since that pit stop where he came out with that extended advantage, just been able to control and slightly gap the field every lap.
Brilliant race from the Trick Esports BMW driver. As the track looks so grippy out there as well. There's so much rubber planted. We've had 50 cars here lap away for 25 laps. You do the math. Those are thousands of laps here of rubber just planted on this surface of Watkins Glen. Just a few hours drive from New York City, the Big Apple. But for us in Australia, we get to drive here virtually. Don't need to travel to New York, and we hope New York gets well soon because it's looking quite grim there. And a lot of marbles there. What a brilliant shot that is. But for Winkelmann, he won't be fussed about that. He's having a good Sunday evening for himself in the 996 Trick Esports machine. He's got a couple corners to go. And man, this Winkelmann will be celebrating this victory for quite some time. A brilliant finish for Anthony Winkelmann. He wins round number 5 for season 11 of the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series.
Coming across the line, second, Luke Pink, fantastic run for him. Tim Feeman just claims third on the line. Craig Edwards, unfortunately, out of fuel, still brings that car home in fourth, so he was on the smell of an oily rag. Teammate Nathan Happett's in there as well. Further down the order, focus on Paul Wood. We've got Pickering and Burden for FSR as well, just ahead. Martin Savassi coming home in 15th for his first run out in the championship this season as well, so great run for him. And then further down, still some battles going on. Adrian Vlock not going to be able to progress further, but he has got Mitch Bales closing in and Dave Miller as well.
What a finish there between Feeben and Edwards. Edwards was on no cylinders across the line. I don't think that Ferrari had any fuel left in it. You got 6 BMWs in your top 7 positions. And if you want to make it worse, we've got 7 in your top 9. Brilliant stuff from those guys piloting the BMWs. Well, not piloting, it's not an aeroplane, but they'll be driving that BMW across the line. Still seeing finishes here at Watkins Glen, but what a finish for Edwards. But hey, credit to him, Daniel. He tried his best to make that strategy work, and I think he did something abnormal, which was pit early, get yourself out of traffic. Had he pitted 1 lap later, though, it would have worked to perfection.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you winners are grinners, and unfortunately for Edwards, just not getting there. If he had been, or if Wickham maybe had to cross that line just that fraction sooner, he would have been in luck. But I think that extra lap hurt him quite a bit, but still, 4th is a nice place to be.
Yeah, there are so many cars, it's almost impossible to flick up the race results because we can't flick them up until they've all crossed the line. I think we'll be able to get it now as we'll look at your final race results for round number 5, season 11. So it's Anthony Winkelmann, as we said, winning this race ahead of Luke Pink in his inaugural top split event here for the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series. The young Carter starting on pole, but ending up behind the Trick Esports driver for the win. We saw Timothy Feeben snatch the final podium position from Craig Edwards at the end of the day. And Edwards was demoted to 4th as he ran out of fuel across the finish line. It just always seems to be that way. Reminiscent of a few races Scott McLaughlin's been having lately in the simulation universe. Down the order, we see Neil Pearson in the 9th position, right behind Darren Lobb in the 999 car. Pearson, our champion from last season, seems to be getting accustomed to the bottom end of the top 10 for this year, and he's quite comfortable after winning that championship for season 10. Down the order, Martin Silvassi, and let me tell you, he is no relation to Juni Silvasti, which I, for some reason, thought of the first time I heard of him, is in the 15th spot. Down the order, Richard Hunter, just ahead of Blake Delaney. They finished 21st and 22nd. I feel like I've raced against Blake Delaney like 10 years ago. Maybe it's just a different dude. I can't remember. But that just hit me right there as I was reading those results. And we see Scott Stevens in 29th ahead of Adam Gardner, who didn't have the best of days, and down in 30th after being involved in an incident earlier on in this race. Martin Crisp down in 33rd ahead of Dave Clements in the 34th position. Didn't see much of those two either. But they made their way home with a good, consistent result. There was Pat Gallo, who was involved in an incident as well, coming home in 42nd. Lee Vandenberg, who, I'll tell you what, very, very unfortunate to see him stricken at the inside of the outer loop twice in that race. Very bizarre to see, but I'm sure he'll bounce back. He's a very strong racer, is Lee Vandenberg. And issues for Braden Nash and Ross Rizzo forced them to fall down the order in P49 and 50. So that's our entire field. Time to speak to Tricky himself. Anthony Winkleman, we've got you, I think.
You do. How are we?
How are you, mate? Well done on another victory and a perfect strategy, an awesome pit stop. You played it to perfection, and a brilliant scrap as well with Luke Pink, let's not forget.
Yeah, it was good, man. He had great pace. It was. I was looking forward to a three-way battle the whole race. I don't know what happened to Craig. He seemed to have a big tank slapper and send him sideways quite early on, but it was good. I was able to save a lot of fuel behind him too, and just save tyres, conserve tyres, and play the strategy card a little bit. But once that was clear, it was just basically banging out as fast as I can each lap.
Now, you might want to look at the Edwards incident again, because not only did he have a tank slapper, but I think he actually clipped the grass on the outside. That's what caused him to spin. What went through your mind when you saw that happen?
A little bit of a sigh of relief, to be honest, because he's been dominating the practice service from what I've seen. I'm very new to this series and the whole fixed setup situation, but he seems to have it down pat. So, look, for him to finish P3 after what happened to him, that's a massive effort. So I actually thought he may have fenced it, but to see him come out still run, that's amazing.
Well, you guys have the fast repair, don't you? So he's probably used that.
Yeah, but he seemed to bounce back pretty quick. Like, he was only, once we passed him, he was still 3.5 seconds in our relative. So, I mean, every time I've hit a fence, I've never been that close to the guys in front of me.
Sorry, mate, I missed my button there. But finally, who'd you like to plug for this victory? We know the Trick Esports team. You guys celebrating that win. We had Trent Thomas as well racing well here for a 6th position. But for Ross, it hasn't been a good day for him, but I'm sure he'll be celebrating with the boys.
Yeah, it was a bit upset about it and sort of left the server. So I'll jump back into the team chat and have a chat to him, see what happened, because I'm not really sure what happened. But massive effort from Trent. Like, don't know if anyone knows, but he's just had a baby, so for him to even race tonight, he's massive kudos to him for getting on, and Muddy too with a great showing as well. So it's all good. We all had a bit of fun, and look forward to the next one.
Well, you're raising a Trick Esports farm system now. Hopefully, little Mr. Thomas will be, or Mrs. Thomas will be racing out there in, 14 years, I think. Luke Pink's only 14 years old. Can be 14 years away from an extra Trick Esports driver on the roster.
Yeah, mate, we're working on a rig already, so that'll be good. No, I'd just like to give a shout out to all the boys from Trick Esports. We've also got on board now, we've got Hybrid Racing Simulations, Fuel Auto Tech, and Momo Australia as official sponsors. So that's really good to have those sort of guys backing us, and also Trick Custom Fabrications, who keeps us pushing hard every week.
So we'll leave you to it, Anthony. Congratulations on victory today. It's been an awesome result for him. And Daniel, you're going to be stood alongside a young man named Luke Pink, who seriously impressed in his debut race.
Thanks, guys. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Luke, mate, not only took pole tonight, come home second position, first time out there. Fantastic result. How have you found it adapting from the karts, jumping across into the virtual world?
Yeah, it's completely different, especially driving a GT. Yeah, I love it. I was super stoked with qualifying pole, and even to top it off with second is my first time. I'm happy for that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you mixed it up with some very talented, some very seasoned competitors in the form of Anthony Wickelman and Craig Edwards early on. How did you find the battle from there? And then as the race progressed, obviously we saw the pit stop. Give us a bit of a rundown on what happened there, because it seemed like the gap extended quite a fair bit.
Yeah, it was a good early stint, keeping up with them, keeping up with the big boys, obviously. And then when it came to pits, I didn't even know what happened there. I think, obviously, I didn't have done a pit stop before or a massive race. Obviously, in these, he just must have edged me there on like the braking, obviously with the speed limit and everything. He must have stopped it a bit quicker than me in the pit stop phase.
And then after that, it looked like the lap times and everything were very, very consistent. Did you find the tyre drop off much over that 45 minutes? And going on from there, I mean, you found yourself not really having to fight too far for third position.
Yeah, I could definitely notice the tyre dropping off a little bit there at the end, like second last corner mainly. Almost lost it there once, like the rear started to kick out a few, so you had to coast more into the corners.
Yeah, definitely. Now, obviously, we continue on for a few more races, so we'd like to see you back in the car because, as Jonathan touched on, very impressive for the first time out.
Yeah, I'll definitely send it again with the team. Awesome team. Joined them a few days ago. Happy, super stoked with the guys there in Mark 1. Awesome people.
Fantastic, mate. Well, before we let you go and enjoy the second, was there anyone from the Mark 1 team you wanted to give a shout out, thanks to it all?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Dave and Mark especially for everything they've done for me the last few days. The sponsors, RMS and Night Rider Designs, for the awesome designs. My family, obviously, putting this all together. Have a few practices before the race meet. Just everyone that's helped me get here, pretty much.
Fantastic, mate. Well, again, congratulations on second, and we'll definitely look forward to seeing you in a few more events over the course of the season.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Another man who came home third was Timothy Phoeben, who snatched that position from Craig Edwards across the line. I'm not sure if that was a surprise for you, Tim, considering Edwards made an early pit stop, and I'm not sure if you were aware that he might have been short on fuel.
Yeah, g'day, Jonathan. G'day, Daniel. No, I wasn't at all aware. One of the boys in the Discord did mention that he might have been short on fuel, but yeah, I wasn't sure whether it was tyres or it was that. And yeah, he sort of obviously coughed just coming into the last corner. And yeah, I just had to be patient and just sort of try and get around him because obviously he was trying to hold the position, but yeah, just didn't want to get caught up in an incident. But yeah, yeah, was really lucky.
And for yourself, though, a decent race. You made up a couple of positions from the start after starting sixth. Watkins Glen, to me, is seriously a fun track to not only use the draft, but it's really a fun track to practice overtaking. If I could run a 50-car race around here, this would be the track to do it at.
Yeah, 100%. No, I had an absolute ball. But yeah, from the start, once I sort of got to where I was, I didn't really come into contact with a lot of other cars, and unfortunately I sort of was just a touch out of the toe from Luke and the other boys, so I just lost touch with that group just sort of in the middle part of the race. And then I had Nathan Huppards. He was coming from behind and he was sort of sneaking into the toe, but I think he had an issue during his pit stop and he dropped back a bit. So yeah, it was, apart from sort of the start, it was reasonably just straightforward, and yeah, I was just punching out lap after lap.
Finally, anybody who gets it done for you in that 988 machine, the BMWs look quick out there, and I'm sure you want to see a few more teammates up in the order with you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the Beamers, yeah, been a really good package this year so far. A few challenges with the new setups, but yeah, no, it seemed pretty good here. But yeah, just like to thank Mark 1 and all our sponsors. And yeah, well done to Luke. First race for Mark 1, he did a really good job. So showing up all the old guys in the team.
So there you go. I keep missing my push to talk button. There you go. That's Timothy Phoeben, who came home in the third position. We'll leave you to it this week, Tim. See you next week at Barcelona, I'm sure, for another 45 minutes of action. But Daniel Leet, you'll be stood alongside Mr. Darren Lobb, who came home 8th after starting from 21st. Brilliant climb up through the order.
Yeah, thanks a lot, mate. And Darren, yeah, as we touched on, very solid run for yourself, coming well through the order. How did you find it out there in the fro tonight?
Yeah, thanks, boys. Yeah, it was good fun. I had a bit of a shocker in the run up to the race. I got caught up in another race serve and only managed to do kind of the last few laps of practice, and then jumped into quali a little bit unprepared and stuck the stupid thing in the wall through the carousel after about 10 minutes in qualifying, which didn't help much. And just knuckled down after that, and I managed to put a decent lap together, running all on my own. That kind of saved me because I thought, oh, second split, here I come. But it was pretty good, and then just, yeah, great race. Just chasing my teammate Neil Pearson all the way, and eventually pipped him to 8th at the end.
Well, yeah, we touched on that because we saw that the pit stop for both yourself and Neil come in pretty well at the same time. You got the jump from there and was able to hold him off with just a slightly shorter stop for yourself. And if that was the case, we were nearing the end on fuel at the end of that race.
Yeah, I was down to about 0.8 of a litre, and it was quite interesting because Neil and I were actually having a bit of a chat just before the pit stop, and we very nearly pitted about 5 laps before we did, because we just knew the draft was going to be so important. And when we eventually decided to pit, it was depending on what the cars in front of us do, whether we went or not. And we jumped into the pits, and shame Neil actually jumped ahead in his pit box and had a reverse. And when I heard him say that, I knew that I was going to end up running ahead of him and not be able to save fuel, so I stuck an extra 2 litres in, and yeah, I'm kissing those 2 litres now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they certainly paid off well for you, and you maintained a good run to the line with the gap. But for yourself and DPR Racing, a fantastic run. Is there anyone you wanted to give a shout out and a thanks to?
Oh yeah, just the DPR Racing guys. It's I stayed away from the sim a little bit over December, January, and supposed to head back home to get married, and with all this COVID stuff, managed to get back online with the boys, I don't know, the last kind of month or so, and it's just been great to be back in the team again, and not back in the team, just chatting with the guys. And then also just, our sponsors, Southwell Lifts and Hoists, Ben Max Mechanical and Bed Smart Racing Service. So without guys like that, we'd never be able to get to where we did. And then also just a thanks to Ryan and the guys that put together this league. He's taken a lot of slack over the last little while with all the setup debate going on, but I think time and time again, week in, week out, the racing's proving to be pretty good. So I think all the flack is worth it. And again, just to you guys, we actually had friends and family watching back home in South Africa, and just great footage, great commentary, and we really appreciate the time and effort you guys put in.
Well, congratulations to you on getting married, Darren, we should say.
Oh, unfortunately, that's a sad story. The whole COVID virus, we had to postpone the wedding, so that's a bit of a sad story, but we'll wait for that moment, and until then, I'll serve out isolation with the missus here at home with me and my sim.
Sorry, mate. I misunderstood you, mate. I thought you said you got married before the isolation period.
Oh, no, don't worry. I'm just trying to bat away the tears now. Thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm kidding, Jonathan.
Worst timing, but we'll leave you to it, Darren, for this week. Hopefully see you back in future weeks for sure. But Daniel, what an event from him. He came home 8th from the 21st position. And another mention would be to Warren Pickering as well, who started down in 38th, came home in 12th at the end of the day.
Yeah, another solid run up through the field, and we saw that tonight from a few drivers having some very, very good efforts and promoting themselves further up. And at the end of this, if you can't make the good qualifying, you can pull off a good race result. It's only adding more points into the championship bag at the end of the conclusion of this, which is what you need to do if you want to get the tiles, same as what we saw Neil do last time out for season 10. But next week, Barcelona, really looking forward to that circuit.
And that race will take place on the 19th of April. That's in a week's time, for 45 minutes around the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, one of the newest circuits on the iRacing service. So aesthetically pleasing to look at. And it hosts round 6 of the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series. All coverage on Apex Racing TV and on the iRacing Esports Network. Loved the amount of viewers we had today. We had a multitude of them. We seem to be getting more and more each round for the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series, and we hope you enjoyed the coverage from Daniel Leet, Scott Newton behind the scenes, and myself, Jonathan Simon. We'll say so long from the Apex Racing TV commentary booth. Don't forget to check out our series sponsors of RMS55 at rms55.com.au. That's the race management service. Abruzzi Racewear and Simfinity. Our winner today was Anthony Winkleman in the Trick Esports BMW, and we'll see you in a week's time at Barcelona.